All right, hello again. So what I'd like to do is actually do a tier ranking of every song of Claudio and Coheed and Cambria's side projects. This will include Prize Fighter Inferno, and that would include the City Introvert, as well as My Brother's Blood Machine, and the Half Measures EP. And then I'm also going to include Shibuti. So that I think they might have had one or two members from their current lineup of Coheed and Cambria, but essentially it's kind of like again Claudio Sanchez's project before he started in full with Coheed and Cambria. But there's a lot that you can get from these side projects and the start that kind of lead into where they went, and that I think is very interesting. And that would be Shibuti's the two EPs, which would be The Plan to Take Over the World, and then the Penelope EP, which I think those came out around in 1999. And then throughout their performances, Claudio himself has done some covers, as well as the band has done some covers. So I have all their covers as well. So, and that's where we're going to get started here. So Pompeii, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. I think that's like a country, right? But this is a song by Bastille, and again, I don't know if I have that pronounced correctly. I think as far as the covers, I'll kind of compare it to the original and give my opinion on whether or not it's better or worse. I think that's obviously this is all very subjective, but I'll comment on how I think Claudio and Coheed and Cambria interpreted the song. And with Pompeii, this one I think is just basically perfection. It's kind of like one thing I mention in all my other videos is that I like it when Claudio has sort of high vocals with sort of this contrast in style in the background, whether it's being extra heavy or being unexpected or just having variety. I think is just really great. And I think in this case, the song is almost like a reggae. It's got sort of a really light beachy feel. And I think some of the songs from Colors Before the Sun kind of have this feel, but I think this is a great one. A Friend to Enemies, I'd say this is an A. So this is more, it's not really a cover, it's more of a side project for his his children's book that he wrote, and they had art for. It was a really cool thing. I bought it for my son and he loved it, but it's called Kid Crazy and the Kilowatt King. And it's actually just a story about basically saying please and not forcing people to do what they don't want. Like in this case, it's to sing. And A Friend to Enemies is the song that came along with it. I was hoping there was a lot more like variation in the vocals, but I think it's a good song, and it's a soft one it's almost like kind of like Afterman or Colors, with a little bit of a lower sort of tone, and it's mostly acoustic, but it's a fun one. Mother. So some of these are like covers that were only done live, others were studio covers. So I should mention that Pompeii is a studio cover, A Friend to Enemies is a studio cover or a studio performance. Mother is just, I only found it in a live performance, and yeah, this one's not so good. So sometimes when you have bands that do covers, you think, well, they're trying to sound like the band that they're covering, or they're trying to make it their own and do something different. I don't really necessarily have a preference, but I think if you're trying to mimic the individual band that you're trying to cover, you'd better be really good. Otherwise, you'll constantly be comparing, say, oh, this isn't even close. So I think it's better to sort of reimagine it, especially since Claudio has such a unique set of vocal abilities. I would like to see that happen. I think with Mother, it was almost kind of a joke where he was trying really hard to sound like the original singer with Danzig, I believe it is, and it's got this sort of low, thick voice, and it definitely doesn't work quite right with that. And in fact, I'm going to throw another one that I think is kind of a joke, is just this Ghostbusters theme here from Ray Parker Jr. When Claudio sang it, again, he did this sort of low vocals, and it was just one live performance. It wasn't anything particularly serious. I threw these in here. I'm trying to cover all, or trying to include all the covers that Coheed and Cambria or Claudio have done. That way, I don't get a bunch of people saying, oh, what about this? What about that? Of course, if I did miss one, please shout it out. I'm always looking for more interesting songs to hear and evaluate. Faithfully. So let's see, where would this go? This is Journey, very nice song. It's a little almost like a ballad, but it kind of explodes at the end. But this was, I wish they had done a studio version of this, because I really like this one. I think it's a really nice present performance by Claudio, and they kind of go with the same sort of tone of the song, but it was a very raw live performance, but he did a very good job vocally with sort of the higher vocals and stuff. and enthusiasm that he had. Also, what was I going to say about it? Oh, I think it's cool that this was kind of a I don't know if you knew, but Mega Man 1 Elect Man, they used Faithfully as the background music for that. I think the creator of that said that they were really into Journey and wanted to do a variation of it for Elect Man. I remember growing up playing that. I'm like, I know this song. And there's a few others that kind of sound like that. I think there's a Bon Jovi song that sounds like that, as well as a Tina Turner song. So that's a very pretty common sort of melody that they have going on in that song. Hello. Boy, this I haven't really thought about these too much. Hello is an Adele cover, pretty recent. He just did it in a studio just himself, Claudio, and his vocals are super like high, and I like it because it interprets the original, but it's more of a ballad form, and it's more of a solo performance that isn't. It feels different than the Adele version, and I like Adele. I think she her music sort of came in and out for me. It was kind of like kind of cool to hear that sort of raspy voice, a raspy female voice. I thought was a very good, unique sound that ultimately, you know, it's not really in my venue of most liked music genres, but it was still cool to see Claudio do it. I think it's funny in the comments because a lot of people make comments like Adele who on the YouTube video of his cover. I don't think it's really comparable, and this would be maybe an S performance, but he has I don't really care for the song. The lyrics are, I find, a little bit emo-esque, pop emo or whatever, relationship oriented, and I think he sometimes when you go like falsetto vocals, sometimes you enunciate words. I'm saying this in general. You sound like you're trying too hard, or it's not quite hitting right. And I think a couple of the notes he was trying to hit sound a little off. Unfortunately, otherwise I think it would be I mean, I don't think it's off tune. It just sounded like his voice didn't hit that note right, in my opinion. Sister Christian. So this cover, I think something has to do with whether or not you like the original song, and this one I'm not a big fan of. What's really kind of cool is it's a lot of these covers that are. This is I would say a more produced cover. It's not a live cover, and what's kind of cool about it is that Claudio, he has his like self harmonies that he does a lot of times with his demos, and he did that throughout in Keeping Secret, Secrets of Silent Earth 3, and a little bit on Good Apollo Volume 1. You see that in the Prize Fighter songs, as well as the demos of Second Stage Turbine Blade. And so this really sounds like a song right off of the demos of those albums. However, it's maybe it doesn't really go anywhere, and it's just very consistent with the original without doing much other than his sort of softer voice, harmonic voice. The Trooper, I think they did this one. I thought they had a produced one. I have to double check that, to be honest. But that was, and Sister Christian, sorry, I meant to mention, is Night Ranger. That's a Night Ranger song. But the Trooper is Iron Maiden, and I think that's kind of cool to see the sort of the influence of Iron Maiden and Pink Floyd and Rush or whatever. I know Claudio doesn't really attribute Rush to an influence so much, but a lot of people do think that there's a similarity there. But with Iron Maiden, I think they do a good job. Again, I think that sort of hair, I don't know if I want to call it hair metal. I'm not sure what the official term for it is, but it's sort of that late 70s, early 80s or whatever, where I think of it as where they like literally have long hair, but it seems just like higher vocals and screams and stuff like that was popular then. Of course, I'm a huge fan of Guns N' Roses, which I think was sort of transitioned that to a little bit heavier, which I think is cool. But the Trooper, it's a fun one. When he did the End Complete, he would go into the sort of the bridge transition where they're doing the solo, and then they went into the Trooper, and then they'd go back, which was a pretty cool performance that they did. More recent one is Anthem, and oh man, I don't know, maybe just yeah. So I'm not a huge Rush fan, and you could tell that this was maybe bring it down here because it's a sound alike. You can't really take it too seriously. It's Claudio trying to sound like Rush, and I think it's a very good job. And then you got what do you have? Primus, Mastodon, Tool, all bands that I really like. Huge fan of Mastodon and Tool. I've seen them live. And Primus, I just love Primus. The bass is really phenomenal in that band, of course, from the lead singer. But but with Anthem, I think they did a great job. I think he kind of proves the point that yeah, dude, Claudio can sound like him and be as powerful, and he was hitting notes pretty insane with that. And I think the difference is Claudio hits sort of this falsetto uh, high notes that he typically does, or a high sort of clean yell in his music. Whereas with Anthem with Rush, he had to like put a lot more power behind it to get that sort of high scream that you get in more of this, I guess, progressive metal, hair metal, or whatever you want to call it, of that era. All right, Love Gun. This is again another very, very recent one, and yeah, these two are, I think, are like perfect. Love Gun. I love the way it's a Kiss song, and the original is so different. I love that they just changed it up completely into this sort of acoustic performance. His vocals are really, really good, but he's got his sort of rasp that he gets sometimes when he does an acoustic song, and maybe his vocals are worn a bit, or he's not in studio, so he's not able to sort of edit and re-edit to get the vocals perfect. So you hear sort of the rawness in there. But yeah, it's better than a live performance. They do have more of a production. It's at a higher quality with it. So that's also cool. And I think it's great. I love the change up to the acoustic version. It sounds like a different song, but it's got the sort of the vibe and the feel of it. And and I love the way he goes into his sort of high notes, the falsetto notes again. Jessie's Girl 2, I think it's a good maybe B, or yeah, maybe this will be a B. This was a lot of fun. I think a lot of people liked it. Brought back sort of that feel of the punkiness from In Keeping Secrets with A Favorite House Atlantic. Some of those, it feels like punky, but it also feels like like the 80s rock. Of course, it's Rick Springfield song, Jesse's Girl, and of course it's a sequel to that. But I like it because it's kind of like Jesse is his brother Jesse from the lore of the Amory Wars. And I think that's really cool as well. The song, it's got some I really love the chorus, but I think the verses, I don't know if he was trying to do a little bit of an 80s grit or something to sound a little bit more like actually Rick Springfield, sorry. But I think it's his verses I don't care for so much in that song. Somebody I Used to Know. This is a live performance, just like Faithfully. I really love this song, but it's a pretty poor recording. So I think we can put this down here a little bit. And so Somebody I Used to Know is I'd say Gotye song. I think it's got this sort of softness to it, and he does match the tone. Usually most of these covers, I notice they kind of match sort of the flow, the melody, and even some of like the riffs, but Claudio always sort of changed it up with his vocals, with like even Sister Christian doing this sort of self harmonies of his soft voice, Hello being just his high pitched voice all throughout. And then Somebody I Used to Know, it's kind of like Love Gun, where he hits these sort of high notes, which are soft and high. And I really like that. It's a cool performance, and it's a different style of song too, which I think is really cool. Blinding Lights. So this is The Weeknd. This was actually the band I was trying to think of when I was doing the song evaluation or album evaluation with Access 2. A lot of people were comparing some of the more dance songs or synth songs from Access 2 to be similar to The Weeknd and sounding sort of like that. And I think Claudio, since this cover, I feel like he was in fact trying to sound like The Weeknd. Maybe he is a fan, and I haven't heard that specifically, but I'm sure it's somewhere. This would probably be higher. I'd love to see him do a studio version at a higher quality, because Blinding Lights here, and I'm not a huge fan of this song, actually. I don't particularly care for it, but I'd like to see Claudio sort of interpret things. And I think this one is just super short. It's almost like, I think it might be a YouTube Shorts or something. It doesn't do the whole song, I don't think, and it's not performed particularly fantastic. And I think it'd be a kind of unfortunate, as the popularity of Weeknd type music is out there, that it might be a bad example of his abilities. Englishman in New York. So he played this song in some sort of event with his wife, Chandra, and they did a great job on it. It's not one of my favorites, but it was produced really well. The sound of it was at very high quality, and they also did The Gutter, which was a pretty interesting interpretation of that. Not my favorite, but it was good. I think they did. I'm trying to think what the other song was. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but it's a good performance there. Russia and a Pull of the Land Is Ours. This one, oh boy, this one is probably a high A. Yeah, maybe. This one is really, really good. It's a good, it's a live performance, but it's live the same way Love Gun is. Like they have, and as well as the Englishman in New York, they have a very good quality sound system there, and it's a nice acoustic performance, really really cool, and it shows his vocal range, his variety, as well as a distinction in the music. So this one is very very impressive for me. It's one of my favorite covers that they've done. It's a song by the Smiths, and oh yeah, and the Englishman in New York. This is a song by Sting. I'm sorry if I seem to have forgotten here and again to mention the actual band. This one again, it sounds a bit different. It's got that signature Claudio acoustic feel that kind of reminds me of things like Homecoming from the Afterman albums, or some of the more raspy stuff that you get in like Far from Year of the Black Rainbow and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. Now I did let's see, Under the Milky Way. Let's see, this one is the Church Under the Milky Way. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this one. Let's see, I think it's probably the best here. I'm just not a big fan of this song. It's got this sort of melody to it that's really really soft. It just sort of repeats and repeats and repeats, and the actual vocalist sounds, I really don't care for the actual song's interpretation by the Church, and so it wouldn't be one that stands out, but it is a nice song. It definitely has that Prize Fighter Inferno feel, especially from like the Half Measures EP. Okay, yeah, I was going to, so Forever Yours, this is actually a typo. I meant it for Your Love from the Outfield, and this one is actually really cool, so I'm going to put this in A. I think it's an opinion between whether or not you like Sister Christian or this one, again, it's supposed to be Your Love by the Outfield, and I think it's kind of an opinion, if you like this song initially or not, and I think makes a big difference, because these are interpreted very very similarly, with the many sort of Claudio voices in the background harmonizing together in a very soft sort of way, while still filling out the similar melody, and also very similar to Prize Fighter Inferno and some of the demos that you get from In Keeping Secrets and Second Stage Turbine Blade. And lastly, we have White Christmas. I have to throw this up into B. This is a really good performance. It's live, it's acoustic, but I like it because it doesn't sound like very cheesy. He does a good job. It's not like a joke, but it's not like super overproduced. I just think it's a nice song. And if you're, I'm actually excited because I found this pretty recently. I'm actually excited to play this during the Christmas time for my kid and say, oh, who's that? Hey, got this Claudio, he's singing a Christmas song. So I think it's kind of neat. Anyway, that's it for now for this particular tier list, and I'll come back and do Prize Fighter as well as Shibuti in a bit.